You just lost another $5,000, didn't you? That feeling that you are the only idiot who keeps hitting the sell button too late. I lived with it every day. You are not stupid. You are just repeating my greatest mistake. I'm Jesse Livermore, and I died broke because I ignored one simple rule. I'll tell you that rule later. But first, let's talk about the easy money. I was 14 when I started. 14 years old, working in a quotation board office. I was just supposed to write the numbers down, but I saw patterns. I saw the rhythm of the market laid out in chalk on a blackboard. The men around me, they saw figures. I saw intention. And I started keeping a little book, tracking those figures, predicting where they'd go next. Have you ever felt that? That cold, absolute certainty in the face of chaos? It's intoxicating. It tells you that you are different, that you hold the key. My first trade, $5, that was my whole stake. It was in a bucket shop, a shady place where you weren't really trading stock. You were betting against the house. I made $3.12. Back then, that was a day's wages for a working man. I doubled my money the next day. I was hooked. I thought the game was about speed, about being faster than the men who were too slow to read the tape. But I'm getting ahead of myself. That initial success, that easy money, it taught me the worst possible lesson, that genius can conquer discipline. I learned that the hard way, in a way that cost me mansions and marriages. You see, I treated the market like a sprint for years. I'd walk into those bucket shops, make a killing, and they'd ban me. They literally changed the rules because of me. They called me the boy plunger, and I loved it. I thought I was invincible. But here's the thing about the markets, the thing I saw when I was staring at those chalk numbers. The market doesn't care if you're fast. It cares if you are right. And more importantly, it cares if you can wait for it to prove you right. I remember the exact day I learned that speed was a mirage. It was years later, after I had moved beyond the bucket shops and into the real exchange. I had a position, a strong position based on my chart work. I was right about the direction, but the market stalled. It drifted sideways for weeks, punishing me with tiny fluctuations, making me doubt the big picture. I was impatient. I sold out, thinking I could find a quicker price. Play. 2 days later, the major move I predicted happened. It went precisely where I knew it would, but without me. I lost nothing on the trade, but I lost something far more valuable: faith in my own conviction. Take a breath with me. Let that sink in. How many times have you been right only to fidget your way out of the profit? I went home that night and realized something profound. It never was my thinking that made the big money for me. It always was my sitting. Got that? My sitting tight. You see the difference? The easy money is the quick scalp, the small win that feeds the ego. The big money, the life-changing wealth, requires a kind of stoic paralysis. It requires patience that borders on boredom. And this brings me to a vulnerability I rarely spoke of, something I buried beneath the headlines of my successes. The problem with being the boy plunger, the problem with winning quickly, is that you develop a deep, paralyzing fear of being idle. I constantly needed action. I needed the thrill. And that need, my friend, is what the market uses to kill you. You're not broken. The game is designed to break you. There's a difference. The market is a machine designed to transfer wealth from the active to the patient. But there's something I haven't told you yet about my greatest failure, the one that kept repeating itself, even after I had the system, even after I had the millions. It involved a woman, a promise and a lie I told myself about my own nature. The markets, they punish hope and fear equally. And the reason you are still losing, despite knowing better, despite reading every book and watching every chart, is because you are still hoping for things to go your way, or you are running from the fear of losing what you have. I made my biggest score in 1907, the panic of 1907. Banks were failing, the whole economy was seizing up. I was short, massively short. I saw the structural rot long before anyone else admitted it, and I stood firm. I watched the tape, and I shorted until I had $1 million in profit. A staggering sum then. I was sitting in my office watching the chaos when J.P. Morgan, the great kingmaker himself, sent a messenger to me. He asked me to stop shorting, not because he cared about me, but because he needed the selling pressure to stop so he could stabilize the economy. In appeal to my patriotism, I scoffed at first. Patriotism, I was a speculator. But I saw the bigger game. I agreed. I covered my massive short position. And then, because I was Jesse Livermore, I reversed course entirely and started buying. The reversal cost me a substantial sum, but the initial short made me a legend. I had conquered the market, and I'd stared down the most powerful man in America. I felt like a god. You know exactly what I'm talking about, don't you? That feeling of power, that moment when you think you can control the tide itself. But power is the most seductive trap. It makes you believe you don't need the system anymore. I developed my system meticulously. It wasn't just about the numbers. It was about price and time. I realized that stocks move in cycles, and the real break, the point of no return, only happens after a long period of consolidation. I started waiting for the true line of least resistance, the moment the stock tells you it's tired of waiting and is ready to run. The system was foolproof. It made me money consistently. It was the key to my eventual fortune in the 1929 crash, where I made over $100 million more money than most nations had in their treasuries. But here's the unexpected shift. The thing I never told anyone, the moment I truly began to lose, even when I was winning. My system worked perfectly on the market, but I couldn't apply the same system to my own life. I would make a fortune, become complacent, and let my emotional demons creep back in. I'd start making small, impulsive bets outside of my system just for the excitement. I'd start getting advice from my friends, amateurs, which is the cardinal sin. I'd listen to the chatter when I should have been listening only to the tape. I wish someone had told me this when I was where you are now, trying to claw back that $5,000. The difficulty of trading is not intellectual. It is entirely temperamental. You must conquer the man in the mirror before you can conquer the market. I had the knowledge, but I lacked the internal fortitude to stick with it through the boring stretches. I hated the boredom. I needed the action, and that need destroyed me again and again. I lost everything multiple times, 4 times to be exact, and rebuilt it all. Each time was more agonizing than the last. Let's talk about 1929, the pinnacle. I was bearish for months, positioning myself perfectly. My system had screamed, sell. Everyone thought I was mad. I ignored the noise. I executed with precision. I walked away with enough money to buy half of Manhattan. That should have been the end of the story, the legendary victory, the retirement. But the real lesson came later, in a way I never expected. After 1929, I was the undisputed king. I had proven the system. I had the money. But the market suddenly didn't interest me anymore. It was too easy. The challenge was gone. I started searching for the thrill elsewhere, in reckless spending, in fleeting relationships, in trying to control things that couldn't be controlled. I was constantly trying to recapture the feeling of being the boy plunger, the genius who defied the odds. But the grown-up market, the real market, demands humility and structure. The escalating stakes here are not about money. They're about your soul. When you lie to yourself about a bad position, when you move your stop-loss because of hope, you are slowly eroding the trust you have in yourself. And without self-trust, you are merely gambling. You're lying to yourself about that position right now, that one that's down 20%, the one you keep telling yourself will come back. I lied to myself the same way. It's human. We convince ourselves that the market owes us something because we worked hard for the money we put in. But the market is utterly indifferent to your effort, your intelligence, or your need. The fact that you're still here, still trying, still searching, that tells me something about you. It tells me you have the hunger. But hunger without boundaries is self-destruction. I ended my life in 1940 in a cloakroom in a hotel in Manhattan. Broke again, but worse than broke. I was defeated. The man who made and lost fortunes, who cracked the code of the universe, succumbed not to the market, but to himself. And this is the emotional climax. I made every mistake you're making, and worse. I was a mathematical genius who failed at the simple arithmetic of self-control. I told you I ignored one simple rule, the rule that cost me everything. It wasn't a trading rule, it was a personal rule. The rule is this: never forget what brought you here. I didn't lose my money because my system failed. I lost it because I stopped respecting the system. I stopped respecting the slow, deliberate process of confirmation. I grew bored with the patience. I thought my name, my reputation, could substitute for the cold, hard evidence on the tape. I was the king of Wall Street. I had mansions, yachts, beautiful women, and endless wealth. But the wealth didn't bring peace. The pressure never truly ended. The need to prove myself, to stay ahead of the game, consumed me. I'm not here to judge you. The challenge of the market is that it demands inhuman patience and perfect execution from a very human, very flawed creature. I spent my life wrestling with that contradiction. The system worked perfectly, but the man implementing the system was fragile. I was brilliant at reading the tape, but terrible at managing the psychological isolation of that brilliance. So here is the final truth, the one that comes from the grave, where money holds no value. The greatest trade you will ever make is the one you don't make. It is the patience to sit on your hands, sometimes for weeks or months, waiting for the setup that is so clear, so undeniable, that the trade essentially makes itself. The biggest money is made by sitting, not by trading, not by overthinking. I built an empire on knowing that the market is always wrong when it comes to the individual investor's expectations. But I couldn't build peace within myself. I finished my life in a hotel coat room, alone, the pressure finally having taken its last toll. The market is not the enemy. The market is merely the mirror reflecting your own character. Go now. Read the tape, not the news. Wait for the signal, and remember this ghost's final warning. In the pursuit of vast wealth, the man who masters his emotions will always conquer the man who masters the data. I'm still here, watching the tape, waiting for the next big move. Are you ready to sit tight and wait with me, or will you twitch? The choice, as always, is yours.